Hi, my name is Sadie Booth. I'm the clinical director here at the Birth Center. And I wanted to talk a bit about what it's like when plans need to change or complications come up and what it's like to leave for the hospital from the birth center. So most of the transports, we call them, are going to the hospital in a private vehicle. So that might be a taxi sometimes, or it might be the car that you came in that might belong to your family or whoever gave you a ride here. It might even be your midwife. And those aren't emergencies. So over time, a good example is if labor is going quite slowly, if the person who's laboring is getting tired, midwives might talk with you about options to get labor moving again. But if those aren't working, or if you had enough, then your midwife might talk about going to the hospital to get some of the medicines and interventions that are available there and not here. So there's no emergency. There's time to talk about it, and you would go by a private vehicle. The chance you have of needing to have that happen in your labor depends greatly on a lot of different things that I can explain all of right now. But one of the big distinctions or differences is between people who have given birth before and people who are giving birth for the first time. So what we do know is if you're giving birth for the first time, you do have a higher chance of having a longer, slower labor. Still, most people having first babies come to the birth center and have a very effective labor and birth and give birth here right at TBC. If you're leaving in a private vehicle from the TBC, as I said, you'd be discussing that with your midwives and making a plan. Usually everyone who's here to support you in labor will help to gather your belongings and all the kinds of support you're getting in labor, whether it's back pressure or talking you through contractions or helping remind you to breathe. All those things can continue to happen as you make your way out of the birth center. There are wheelchairs available if that helps you to get to the car you're going by, and your midwife will call ahead to the hospital. The vast majority of the time, those transports are to the midwife's own hospital. So in prenatal care, you'll hear from your midwife about where they have their hospital privileges. And if you leave in a private vehicle during labor, you would be going to your midwife's own hospital. If you need to leave the TBC by ambulance for a transport, which as we talked about is quite a bit less common, it's not a big chance. There are a number of things in the birth room and that our staff, the birth center aides, are trained in that help support your midwives to respond as quickly as possible. When a birth center aide comes to help at your midwife's request, and your midwife might be thinking of calling an ambulance, the birth center aide will come with a phone and be prepared to take the information from your midwives to make that call to 911. They'll also bring your midwives some papers to continue their documentation on. And they'll bring a kit of equipment that your midwife can use to continue to make assessments and to treat you and or your baby on the way to the hospital. In a transport to the hospital by ambulance from the birth center, the birth center aides would make sure the paramedics come to the right room, and the paramedics would work with your midwives to talk about what's happening and what kind of care you need in the quickest, most effective way possible. They would usually bring a stretcher into the room, and you and or your baby would likely be on it. And then we have a dedicated entrance and exit that's just for use of paramedic staff and ambulance staff, and that's the exit you would leave by.
Hi, this is our ambulance entrance. When midwives need to call an ambulance to transport a client to hospital, paramedics can access the birth rooms through this door, which is very close to our birth rooms. Our kitchen area is situated right next to our ambulance entrance. So you may be asked to leave this space if there is a transport to give our clients privacy.
When you leave the birth center in an ambulance, your midwife has a decision to make about whether to go to their own hospital, as they would if you were leaving in a private vehicle, or whether the concern is so immediate that you need to go to the closest hospital with the service required. So if it's an obstetric emergency that needs the closest hospital, your transport by ambulance would be to St. Michael's Hospital, which is less than a kilometer south and east of us here. And if your baby is the person who needs a transport to the closest hospital and services, that would generally be to the hospital for sick children, which is also quite close by. During your prenatal care, during your labor assessments, during your whole labor and birth, immediate recovery, and the 6 weeks of your and your baby's care afterwards, your midwife is trained to recognize signs that things are no longer normal. Some of midwife skills involve offering you options that might help steer things back to a normal course. When those aren't working or when the situation is more serious, your midwife is trained to provide the kind of care to support you and your baby's well-being and to get you to more help from specialists like obstetricians or pediatricians, and sometimes that can be by ambulance. The equipment and supplies that Toronto Birth Centre is stocked with is all the same kinds of equipment that midwives also carry for home births. So we think about the safety of birth at home as being quite similar to birth at the birth centre.